He wanted fame more than love, and learned to trade whispers for doors. From the first stolen glance on a midnight runway to secret dinners with married power brokers, every step up the glittering ladder was built on someone else's promises. Men with rings, men with empires played them all, collecting favors like currency, believing charm could outpace consequence. Then came the architect of silence, the one man who knew every name, every debt, every late night message. Their connection burned slow breath against neck, rules spoken like prayers, until his quiet control turned to ruthless erasure. Campaigns vanished, contracts dissolved, friends became witnesses. Now the boy who sold desire for opportunity stands alone, reputation in ashes, a single text vibrating in the dark. Are you ready? Ready for what, a comeback, a final trap, or a life without borrowed power? I learned early that admiration was a currency, and my face was a mint. I was 21, a runway fill-in who had never been paid on time, living on protein bars and the thrill of a booking email. The shocking part waits. The first time I took a dinner with a man who promised a campaign, it was that the promise worked. A week after that steak, a fragrance brand wanted my bones and angles. I told myself I was simply networking with better lighting. The night that broke me began backstage at a charity show in Midtown. Stylists swarmed like bees, pins bit skin, and a publicist whispered the order of the walk as if it were scripture. I was set too close. My name printed last felt like a crown. I told my reflection hold. Holding meant chin up, teeth hidden, breath shallow, heart locked. He appeared at the edge of the garment racks, tall, married, a board member everyone envied. He shook hands with the designer, slid a glance onto me like a patent glove, and asked if I had plans after the show. His ring flashed. I thought, connection, leverage, an elevator disguised as a car. I nodded. I told myself it was agency. I told myself I was a pragmatist with good posture. The walk went clean, the cameras kissed. Applause lacquered me. When I stepped off the runway, he was waiting with a driver and a sentence. That energy you have shouldn't be left alone. No one had ever named my hunger so gently. In the back seat, the city streaked, and his questions skated across my resume as if he had written it. He knew casting directors by nickname. He knew which magazines still paid. He knew the gatekeeper's favorite sins. At the hotel bar, he didn't touch me. He placed his phone face down and drew a little map of the next 6 months on a cocktail napkin. You'll need 2 editorials, 1 cover rumor, and a whisper that you're difficult. I laughed too loud. He smiled, pleased I could play. When I stood to leave, he finally tapped my wrist. Come upstairs if you trust me. Trust was a word I replaced with strategy. Upstairs, the room smelled like cedar and new money. He loosened his tie and sat, not next to me but across, as if we were signing papers. He talked work, then lowered his voice and asked if I knew how power moved. I said yes. He said, show me. His hand stopped on my ribs. His breath warmed the side of my neck. My heart unlocked by itself. Morning brought 3 emails. A casting adjusted to accommodate me. A test shoot upgraded to editorial. And a private message from a stylist who suddenly remembered my name. My phone became a faucet. I watched the water run and told myself I was finally clean. The break was not the night with him. The break was what it taught me. I realized doors were obedient. They did not open for good boys. They opened for useful men. I practiced usefulness. I learned to sit at right angles in restaurants, to make married men feel like young gods, to let them think they were choosing me while I quietly circled the dates on their calendars. I was efficient and kind and never sentimental. The shock was how quickly kindness curdled after the 3rd late meeting. My best friend texted a paragraph without punctuation. You're selling pieces of yourself like samples on a tray. I answered with a heart emoji and went back to the dinner where a sponsor's laugh puffed out his cheeks like a child's. He touched my shoulder as if I were a doorbell and said, we're going to take care of you. I smiled because that was the job. When the campaign came out, my face towered over Soho, 30 feet of cheekbones and calculation. People tagged me as meteoric. The word felt accurate, a bright stone falling. I couldn't see the ground yet. I only heard the air peel around me and thought it sounded like applause. I slept in that sound, mistaking it for wind. The first crack hit itself. A number saved as mentor, dinners that skipped dessert, a rule I never ask for promises, only timelines. It felt like armor. It was glass. The consequences were immediate and warm, like stepping into a shower already running. The editorials stacked. Makeup artists started asking for my shade by name. A casting agent who never looked up from her laptop suddenly stood to hug me. My landlord began answering my emails. I upgraded from a mattress on the floor to a bed that remembered my spine. I called my mother and told her I was fine. She said she could hear a new echo in my voice and asked if my apartment had high ceilings. I said yes and pretended the echo was architecture, not hunger. With momentum came appetite. I kept the dinners civil and the mornings efficient. I learned to thank men by listening. I learned to leave before their stories turned into futures. Married was simpler, no one texted after 10. Rich was cleaner, their help signed the day and sent a car. I told myself I was not cruel, only organized. He entered through the side door of a studio no one could afford without sponsorship. We were shooting a denim story, the kind where they ruin the jeans on purpose so America can pay more. He didn't belong to the crew, or to any crew. He belonged to the people who owned crews. He watched the monitor with a quiet that made everyone else perform professionalism. The hairstylist whispered, "That's Adrian," and stopped whispering like the name itself was a contract. Adrian didn't smile. He barely nodded. He asked for takes like requests again, but let the breath do the work. When the photographer balked, Adrian did not raise his voice. He stepped forward, touched the edge of the light with his palm, and the room shifted toward him like iron toward a magnet. His ring was heavier than the others, I.D. learned. The band looked like something that could bruise metal. At lunch he sat across from me, not close enough to touch, close enough to feel counted. "You're the reason Thayer's here," he said, as if he were telling me the weather. "You look like a decision." I answered with a joke, but he wasn't collecting jokes. He asked what I wanted that I had not yet said out loud. I said a cover. He said wrong. I tried again, longevity. He nodded once. Better. When we wrapped, he didn't invite me to dinner. He invited me to walk. We circled the block twice while his driver idled with patience only wealth can purchase. He asked about the men who had helped me. He didn't ask names. He asked patterns. I told the truth because telling the truth felt like showing off. He listened the way rich men watch their dogs, alert, fond, ready to tighten the leash if needed. He finally touched my elbow at the curb. He'd climbed to the place his fingers paused. "If you're as pragmatic as you claim," he said, "stop playing retail and go wholesale." I laughed. He didn't pick one man who can actually build something around you. Then stop wandering. He gave me a card with only a number. No title, no company, just a number and my reflection in its gloss. I texted him that night, "Thank you for today." He replied, noted. It read like a test I had passed by not oversharing. 2 days later, a casting director I had never met said, "You're on hold for the fall campaign," and mentioned a budget that sounded like a dare. I stared at Adrian's number and decided the dare was addressed to me. We met again at a private viewing where art looked like polished grief. He didn't crowd me. He placed me near the donors and let me watch them watch me. "This is how power moves," he murmured, his breath finding the side of my neck even in a room full of lacquered air. "It chooses tables." He chose one. My chair was already pulled out. My name was already on a place card I had not printed. Somewhere between the first pour and the speech by a man who owned 3 magazines, I realized Adrian wasn't offering a ladder. He was offering a frame. Frames make pictures look inevitable. I leaned in. He didn't kiss me. He pressed 2 fingers to my wrist like a promise written in pulse. "We'll talk tomorrow," he said. "Drop the others." Tomorrow became a week of curated coincidences. Adrian never asked me to meet. He informed me where I'd already be. A fitting shifted to his building. A quick coffee with an editor somehow landed in his office lounge. His assistants looked at me as if I were a new software license. He moved without hurry, but every door opened exactly the amount he needed. Gravity wore a tailored suit. Our calls were briefs. "You'll be seen," he said about a runway slot I hadn't auditioned for. "Keep quiet," he said when a gossip account posted a photo of me leaving a hotel at 7 a.m. I obeyed because he made obedience feel like strategy I had authored. The tension threaded itself through ordinary moments. His hand on the small of my back while we crossed a lobby, his voice lowering when he said my name, the way his driver didn't look at us in the rear view but adjusted the mirror anyway. He insisted on boundaries like a coach, not a lover. Sleep, he texted at 11, too. At 6:30 he sent a calendar invite titled Water. He asked me what I feared most professionally. I said being ordinary. He corrected me. "Being replaced, there's a difference." The correction landed hot on my neck. I didn't know if the heat meant shame or attention. Maybe both. The first spark arrived in the quiet after a storm of motion. We had just finished a day of go. seas compressed into hours by his influence. I followed him up to a penthouse he used for work things. The elevator opened into a room that looked like it had been styled to resemble restraint. Gray, clean, expensive. It smelled like nothing. He removed his jacket as if shedding a skinhead grown for the building below. "You did well," he said, and the praise made my ribs lift. He didn't touch me first. He sat, legs apart, elbows on knees, and studied me as if I were the launch of a product he wanted to protect from the men he sold it to. "You're collecting debts without recording where they live," he said. "That's sloppy." I tried to defend myself, then stopped, because the defense sounded like a plea. "Teach me," I said. He approached like a decision, not a rush. His hand paused on my collarbone. "This is where men confess without words," he murmured. His thumb moved once, small. I heard an engine in my chest engage. He asked if I was with anyone else. I said yes, because honesty had started to feel like a gift I could afford now. He nodded, almost pleased. "Don't be sentimental," he said. "Be precise." I looked forward. I felt his palm settle at my ribs, the same place others had used like a handle. With him it felt like a hinge. The door opened, not to a bed, but to a new angle in me, a carefulness that felt intimate. The first kiss wasn't a kiss. It was his forehead resting against the side of my head while we watched our reflections in the window. "The city looked like a circuit board," he said. "Longevity means you belong to time, not to a man." I whispered, "Then what are you?" A pause. "A timeline. We didn't sleep together. We slept next to each other, our hands meeting by accident and staying by consent. That night taught me restraint as theater." His fingers stopped at the hem of my shirt, mine settled at his waist where the fabric folded like a crease in a map. We breathed in sync because he decided we would. When I woke, he was already dressed, tying his cuff like a signature. "Breakfast downstairs," he said. The elevator hummed like a kept secret. Over eggs we began to draft my myth. He deleted phrases that made me sound grateful. "No one invests in gratitude," he said. "They invest in risk they think they can price." He wanted me rumored difficult, yes, but also rumored necessary. He introduced me to a publicist who smiled like a coin toss. He sent a note to a brand director that read only, "We're on." The director replied, "Copy." It was like listening to people exchange keys in a language made of doorways. The spark kept brightening in sideways gestures. At a gala he adjusted my bow tie, and instead of stepping back, stayed close enough that the fabric of his shirt spoke against mine. "Steady," he said, and my body obeyed before my brain could examine the command. In the car, he asked how many men I was still managing. I said 3. "Reduced to 2, he said. "I prefer redundancy in equipment, not in narrative." The correction sounded like care wearing boots. One night he didn't walk me to the door. He stayed in the car and let the window lower. "I'm moving some things around you," he said. "Keep your head cool." I asked if he was jealous. He almost smiled. "I don't do jealous," he said. "I do architecture." The window climbed. The car left me in the wash of its air like a wave receding, pulling sand from under my feet. I stood there, shoes in gravel, and felt the ground tilt toward him. I told myself I had finally found the wholesale he demanded. I picked up the phone and began to end things with the others. I did not use cruelty. I used the future tense as a scalpel. "I won't be available," I said. "The schedule is impossible," I said. "Let's pause," I said, like a director calling for silence before a crucial scene. Adrian texted, "Good." Then water, then sleep. I told myself discipline was romance by another name, and I let it dress me just. Almost then, the crack arrived as a compliment. "You're efficient," Adrian said after a show, the word landing on me like a medal. "You closed 3 rooms tonight without anyone feeling closed." I thanked him. He turned his glass a calm circle. "Which 2 did you keep?" I told him. He knew them already, of course. He knew their assistants' birthdays. He knew which hotel doors stuck in summer. He nodded, then asked for my phone. I handed it over because that had become a ritual. He would reorder my chaos, and I would feel curated. He scrolled, paused at a message labeled simply "de," and set the phone down face up. "Delete the thread," he said. I tried to joke. That would ruin my long game. "Delete it," he repeated, same tone, as if adjusting a light. I hesitated just long enough to insult him. A small shutter closed behind his eyes. He didn't raise his voice. "You came to me for architecture," he said. "I am removing load you cannot carry." "I can carry it," I said, and heard the boy in my voice. He leaned back. "Then you don't understand what we're building." He tapped the screen once, as if testing glass for cracks. "You think leverage is a bouquet. "I'm showing you it's a single stem." Something in me bristled. I lied without fully deciding to. "It's over with, dear." The phone buzzed as if to mock me. A new message slid into view, a photo of a breakfast tray in a hotel I didn't recognize, my watch peeking from under a napkin like a witness. Adrian didn't look at the photo long. He looked at me. The quiet stretched to a width that felt like a hallway with no doors. Finally he said, "You're ordinary." The word had the weight of a verdict. "You're replaceable." The second word landed like a stamp on wet paper. I reached for anger because shame was too hot to hold. "You told me not to be sentimental," I said. "I told you to be precise," he answered. The room tilted. My mouth kept moving. I thought wholesale meant abundance. He almost smiled. "Wholesale means consolidation." He gestured around us, the room, the city, the network I thought I had learned to surf. "Chaos is cheap. Focus is expensive." I said I could focus. He nodded once and stood. "Prove it. Cut them off tonight." We walked to the elevator like strangers whose shadows still remembered kissing. In the car, he didn't sit beside me. He took the other seat, a small diagonal that felt like winter. "This isn't jealousy," he said without being asked. "This is quality control." I cut them off. I used short sentences with clean endings. I watched the read receipts appear and disappear like blinks. I felt nothing at first, then I felt everything at once. A rush I mistook for clarity. I texted Adrian, "Done." He replied with a dot. The dot became a week of silence. The absence felt engineered, like a soundproof booth around my life. My phone, cruel child, kept bringing me news about myself. A booking regretfully postponed, a feature moved to Cone, a stylist switching direction. I wrote to my publicist. She said, "Adrian is aligning some things, stay still." Another message arrived from a number I didn't recognize. It contained a link to a gossip item. "Model makes powerful enemies." The photo was of me laughing in a lobby months ago, my throat too open, my joy available to strangers. I called the only person who could clean it. He answered on the first ring. "Don't call," he said. "Text." I texted, "Is this you?" He replied, "It's not me." I told myself he was pruning rumors to preserve the trunk. I told myself this was the cost of consolidation. I repeated his rules in my head like a pledge. We finally met in a room colder than the last. He didn't offer water. He opened a folder and slid a page toward me. It was an email I had sent months ago to a man in a different city, a generosity I thought harmless. Adrian had printed it like a lesson plan. "You waste capital on men who cannot sign anything that matters," he said. "You feed stray cats and call it strategy." "I'm here," I said. "I chose you." "No," he said, soft. "You tried to choose everyone, and you arrived at me because I am the only one who can tolerate the arithmetic." He closed the folder. But even arithmetic breaks if a hand keeps shaking the table. I reached for him. He didn't move. "We're on pause," he said. "No dinners, no walks. You will attend what I send. You will speak when asked. You will be silent otherwise." It was a revelation disguised as a rule. I had traded wandering for a leash. I told myself the leash was silk. He looked at me and saw rope. When I left, the air outside felt used. I stood on the sidewalk and watched my reflection in a window ripple as a bus passed. I wondered if I had become difficult in the wrong way. The next morning a brand canceled, the message polite and empty as white paint. Another week, another rumor about my behavior. The bond didn't shatter with a bang. It separated along lines he had already drawn, like glass cut by someone who knows where to press. The roller coaster started with a small mercy. A junior editor who still believed in talent slipped me a line about an opening in a late summer issue. "If you can get approval," she wrote, "I'll slide you in." Approval meant Adrian, whether or not his name appeared. I told myself it was a reunion disguised as a logistics question. I texted, "Can we align on an editorial?" A full day passed then. Come to the office alone. The office had the quiet of a museum wing after closing. His assistant offered nothing. Adrian waited behind a desk he rarely used, as if choosing formality would remind me who signed the air here. He didn't invite me to sit. "Show me the board," he said. I pulled up the mood, the photographer, the angles. He watched without blinking. "You still want to be seen," he said, almost tender, as if diagnosing a fever. "But visibility without ownership is a floodlight in someone else's parking lot." He circled the photographer's name. "This man gossips for sport. Why are you still near him?" "Access," I said. "Addiction," he corrected. He stood, walked around the desk, and stopped at my side. I felt his presence first, then his heat. He took the phone gently, as if it might bruise, and deleted 2 names from my favorites. Repetition is not strategy, he said. His breath touched my cheek while he spoke, the intimacy as deliberate as an underline. Do you still think I am the threat? No, I said, because I needed the issue, because the need sounded like a confession even to me. He granted approval with a nod that felt like a returned heartbeat. You'll shoot on Thursday, he said. You want post about it. You want smile too widely at the stylist. And you will go home after. After, he took a step back, eyes on me. After you come here. The reunion was not about forgiveness. It was about inventory. He asked for a list of the men I had managed over the past year, and not just the famous ones. He wanted the discreet benefactors whose names never appeared on a receipt. I gave initials. He asked for first names. I gave them. He nodded as if confirming the contents of an unmarked box. Understand me, he said. I don't care about what you did. I care about the noise it makes when it echoes. He leaned in so I could smell the clean of his shirt. Noise is a threat. I remove threats from me, I asked. From the asset, he said. Right now that happens to be you. Thursday's shoot felt like a second debut. The photographer behaved, the light cooperated, and every frame made a case for my survival. When we wrapped, the crew clapped as if coercion could become affection, if done politely enough. I went home, like he said, and sat in the quiet he had prescribed months ago. Quiet felt different now. It felt like a checkpoint between rooms that were not mine. At 10, his car arrived like a sentence. We ascended to a different penthouse, this one warmer, which scared me more. He took off his jacket and did not pretend to be my manager. He stood very near and asked, "Did anyone touch you today?" The question was not about jealousy, it was about fingerprints on a device. "Only the makeup artist and me," he said, and touched the place behind my shoulder blade where I carried the day. My body betrayed me by leaning into that touch, the way tired people lean into elevators trusting the lift against better judgment. He didn't kiss me, he just stood there and rewired my breath. We ate in the kitchen, leaning against the island like conspirators. He poured water, not wine. He asked if I could be still for a month. I said yes before I considered rent, ego, the itch to be seen. He watched the yes pass through me. Good, he said. Then we can begin. Begin meant he moved me, not into his place, but into an apartment that belonged to a company with a polite name. The lease had blanks where humans usually go. The bed was better than mine, the towels thicker, the windows higher. The building's doorman learned my first name overnight. Deliveries arrived with no return address. It felt like safety, which is to say it felt like a net. The new threat announced itself without a face. Messages appeared in my request folder, screenshots of texts I had sent months ago, angles of me entering buildings I didn't remember, one video of me laughing on a stairwell while a hand knot visible moved on my lower back. The captions were kind in the way knives can be. Be careful, King, people talk. I sent them to Adrian. He replied, already on it. A private number called. A voice I didn't recognize said, "He's cleaning you. Who is this?" Someone who was cleaned before. The line went dead. I told myself ghosts dial phones whenever a man like Adrian opens a file. I told myself this was a phase of the architecture. The roller coaster climbed. The editorial hit the stands with a headline that read like a victory that owed me nothing. Strangers on the street said my name out loud. My mother thanked the nice mentor in a text. I did not correct her. I sent Adrian a photo of the spread. He wrote, "Do not confuse ink for ownership." Then the new threat acquired a face. Dom, a producer with a grin that sold budget increases and disaster recovery the same way. Dom had been one of the early dinners. I had kept him in the stable because he was generous with introductions and stingy with attention. He approached me at an after-party with the confidence of a man who believes in his own immunity. "You are hard to reach," he said, and handed me his phone. On it, a message thread me words to him, careful and suggestive, now forwarded to half the city. "Fix this." I texted Adrian. "Bring him to me," he replied. We sat in Adrian's office like parents called to a principal. Dom performed boredom, then rage, then magnanimity. Adrian listened as if Dom were ordering from a menu. When Dom finally threatened to leak, Adrian said, "You are not the one with the pipeline." The sentence was soft enough to sound like weather. Dom swallowed, recalculating the map in his head. "Apologize," Adrian told me when Dom left. "Not to him, to the men who matter." He handed me names. I called them in order, my voice low, my words clean. I apologized for noise. I promised quiet. Most answers were cordial. One was not. He said, "You forgot that we all know each other." Then he hung up. The next morning a brand dropped me. The note was surgical. Adrian sent no consolation. He sent an itinerary: meet here, stand there, nod now. I followed, because momentum wears the same suit as courage if you don't inspect the seams. By nightfall I had regained a booking I hadn't known I'd lost. See, I texted, greedy for approval. He responded, see, then, don't breathe too loudly. The roller coaster crested. I looked down and finally saw how high we were, how thin the metal, how little the bar across my lap would hold if his hands let go. The reunion felt like a reset performed with gloved hands. No warmth, only precision. He reinstated me with a nod, then reminded me the same hand could erase the line. I nodded. Och, the explosion wasn't loud, it was meticulous. It began with a spreadsheet. Adrian slid it across the table the way some men slide a ring. Columns, dates, amounts, initials. The sheet didn't accuse, it accounted. The first column listed the names I had spoken in his office weeks earlier. The second listed favors intros, bookings, whispered rescues. The third, stamped in a gray that felt like a bruise, listed who else those men had bought on the same nights. You thought you were unique, he said, voice almost kind. You were simply early. I stared until the numbers lost meaning and became a city scene from too high. Why show me this, so you stop arguing with gravity? He tapped a cell with my initials. They'll all keep talking, some because they are angry, some because it's profitable, all because noise is a product. He folded the sheet once, crisp. I asked you to go still. You kept vibrating. I cut them off, I said, thin as paper. He nodded. After you taught them the script, he leaned back, studied me. Tell me how many you held at once at the height. The number refused to leave my mouth. I made it smaller. 3, he waited. I felt the weight like a hand on the back of my neck. 4, I said. He kept waiting. 5, I said, and something in my chest dropped to floor. He reached for my wrist with a gentleness I hated for its accuracy. His thumb found the pulse. Confession is useful only if it permits design, he said. Otherwise it's theater. He let go. Do you understand that you are the leak? I was doing what the room demanded, I said. You were performing hunger to men who mistake appetite for purity, he said. They loved the story in you that absolved their rings. Anger flared in me because the alternative was collapse. And you, what did you love? Potential, he said without shame, and silence. The betrayal arrived as an administrative change. My agency emailed that we were taking a fresh direction. A brand that owed me a flight canceled with a half apology and a voucher. The editor who had slipped me the summer line wrote 2 paragraphs about budget cuts. When I called, her voice sounded like a hallway where someone is crying in another room. He's drying the floor, she whispered. I went to him. Security brought me up with the politeness reserved for people who no longer exist. Adrian stood by the window with the city obedient below. You asked me not to be ordinary, I said. You made me a cautionary tale. He didn't pivot. I made you quiet, he said. I told him about the empty days, the faucet turned off. I told him about the inbox that had become a museum of past tense. You're killing me, I said, and heard the drama leave the sentence as soon as it hit air. I was not dying, I was being erased. You're not dead, he said. You're paused at a different scale. What do you want me to do? Disappear, he said. Let the market miss you. The story needs a gap to rebuild spine. I can't pay for a gap. You were supposed to save, he said, and for the first time a small disgust entered his tone, the kind reserved for interns who forget the Wi-Fi password. I told you water, sleep, quiet. You drank rooms instead. Help me, I said, hating the shape of the words in my mouth. He finally turned. Help is an investment, he said. You are no longer a growth asset. Something snapped under my ribs, a small sound like a ribbed seam giving. You said wholesale. I did, he said, and I bought back the inventory. I left because staying would have made me beg. I walked until the city's grid felt like a net that had finally noticed me. At Home High's company's home that had briefly been Mineth keycard blinked red. 1 blink, 2. Pause. I tried again. The lock didn't argue, it simply did not care. I went to my old place. A super I hadn't seen in months looked at me the way people look at whether they'd hoped was over. My room had been repainted. The new tenant had a bicycle and a plant with leaves too glossy to be real. I slept on a friend's sofa and pretended the angle of the cushions was a choice. Rumors multiplied like mirrors. A stylist I had loved for wickedness posted an emoji that looked like a mouth zipped closed. Dom began to smile openly in rooms where my name used to float. A podcast said the model who thought he was a mogul without saying my name. My mother asked if she should pray, which told me she had been praying already. I wrote Adrian once more. It was not a plea. It was a thesis. I will go still. I will hold. I will accept design. He responded too late. Silence replaced even the rumors. The market did not miss me. It replaced me with a boy whose face looked like mine if you erased 3 lessons. I thought of the spreadsheet and the gray column, of what it means to become data in someone else's caution. I realized that for months I had mistaken proximity for protection. I had stood near the architect and believed the bricks would love me back. The betrayal was not his alone. It was mine too. A slow willingness to be instructed past the point of self. I missed the dinners, yes, but I also missed the agency of deciding when to stand up. I missed the petty freedom of bad choices. I missed noise, so I made some. I called the thread I had lied about, the man who threw breakfast like a bouquet. I told him the truth without dressing it for a table. He met me in a bar where the stools remembered the shape of rich men. He looked older around the eyes. He's cleaning you, said. He did it to others. They moved to different industries. One runs a gym. One married money that doesn't care about cameras. He laughed without joy. One left the country. Will he stop? I asked. He stops when you stop feeding the story, said, which is to say maybe never. I walked home beneath billboards that showed a boy I almost recognized. The wind had the cold honesty of freedom. In my pocket, my phone was quiet. I realized quiet could be something I chose instead of something done to me. I went upstairs to the sofa I borrowed and lay on my side like a folded letter. Morning came anyway. I brewed coffee with the care of a surgeon. I made a list titled without them. The first item was small, call mother. The second was humiliating, ask for shifts at the cafe I had quit in triumph. The third was practical, sell 3 pieces of clothing that only mattered to photographers. The fourth was the only one that made my hand shake. Stop being beautiful for rent. I underlined it twice. At noon, a message arrived from an unknown number. It contained only a street address and a time, no name. I almost laughed. The architecture never sleeps. I closed my eyes and felt the hinge at my ribs. It still opened. I still could choose. I went back to the river where we had once walked after a shoot, where he told me power chose tables. The walkway was empty except for a jogger and a couple arguing softly. I practiced saying nothing, letting the cold press my throat. If I could master silence, maybe I could make it mine again. A ferry passed. Its wake reached the rocks after the horn was gone. I counted the seconds between sound and water. When I turned to leave, my phone stayed quiet on purpose. I wrote no more architecture, no more borrowed ceilings. I would build a low room I could afford and stand in it without performing. It wasted victory. It was a small livable truth. The lobby smelled like leather and practiced silence. Upstairs, a man I didn't know slid a folder toward me. A price for vanishing yo interviews, no memory, no name. Sign, he said, and you'll be left alone. I pictured being seen only as evidence. My face turned into a warning label. I set the pen down. What if I want to work? Then not there, he said, nodding at the city that once applauded. I took the elevator, the contract street. The calf's apron felt like a flag I could carry. I served strangers who didn't look up. At night I wrote, drink water, stop borrowing ceilings, refuse numbers with no names, keep one shirt you want sell. Dom reappeared. Consult on a series about power, he purred. I binned his card, kept the tip. By the river, the ferry's wake arrived late and sure. My phone buzzed. Are you ready? I let the question sit like a coin. I didn't answer. The city lit itself without me. I walked home through cold air, turned my key and wrote 2 words, begin again.